Okay, we're going live.
Goodbye.
I'll tell you later.
All right, bye.
Looks like
Somebody
we are
just
there.
Looks like what?
Yep, we're on.
Hooray.
All right, let me get back over here.
Allow me to start inviting people like crazy.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
There we go.
Hi, everybody.
All right.
All right, here we go. Invite.
Oh, yeah,
Race. Invite.
All right, well, welcome to this month's edition of High5 Live. Words, they're tough.
Because words.
Excited to hang out with my guys tonight. Michelle is on vacation with her girls, so we're gonna miss her, but I know she's out there having fun someplace in Florida, I think, right?
Yes, Panama City Beach.
Panama City Beach.
And they are having fun without me.
Wow. How is that even possible?
I don't know. That is a great question. That is a question for the ages, Barb.
It is a question for the ages. It is. All right. Well, this is our High5 Live unscripted. As you guys know, this is our format now. And if there's certain things you want to talk about, enter it into Facebook, and we will love to talk about anything you want to jam on. And we got stuff that we're passionate about, near and dear, and just come up in our world. So we'll talk about that tonight as well, and kind of just see where this all goes. First off, though, yeah, it's okay to choose joy. That is what we're all about. And I wanted to start tonight, guys. So this really is unscripted because they have no idea I'm going to ask this question. With each of you talking about what does it mean? Why is one of our key messages I go first? What does that mean to you, and where do you, just one example, because you probably have lots, but where do you apply that in your life? So
All right, I'll go first.
Good job, Kev. All right.
Next time I just won't leave myself on mute.
Yeah, see? Yeah, technology's not your friend always, Chad. You know, I go first, to me, is all about being the role model. And we are role models, whether we know it or not. People are watching. And so for me, it's about a conscious choice to be first, to do the things. It would be out of integrity for me to expect somebody else to do something before I'm willing to do it myself. And therefore it's about me going first. And that really is what it's about for me. So every time that I find myself having a question about, well, you know, what's the answer here? Or, you know, what should somebody do? I always look back and I say, no, what should I do? And how do I go first? How do I be the role model? How do I demonstrate what it is that I want to show? Because for me, that's what it's all about. And so that's my best definition of where I go first comes into my life.
Yeah, and that's a great example of why going first is very beneficial, because Kevin pretty much just said exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, see, you got to go first, Chad.
Because that's how I feel. Is I am a role model at all times. Like people see what's going on, people see it, and that's what's really important. So if I want to create the change, then be the change and role model the change. One good example in my personal relationships is like vulnerability, is being open and honest with the people in my life, because then I'm showing them what that looks like, and then they know it's okay and safe to do that with me too.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
That's a really good example.
Dominic.
Very fun.
Yeah, this is why I go third.
Ditto. The answer is ditto.
Yeah, so for me, it's more about being a role model. No, I'm just kidding. For lately, for me, it's been health. There are things that, so it's very easy to concentrate on what I can't do rather than what I can do. And for me to focus on what's best for me health-wise and not dwell on what I can't do, that's me taking care of myself in order to do the things that I can and that I want to do. And if I don't do that, and it's really easy for me to give and not take care of myself, and in the long run it doesn't do anybody any good if I'm on the sidelines. So taking care of me first, I have to have it first before I can give it away. So in order for me to give and to be generous and to give my time and put in my 100%, I have to have 100%. So that's what it means to me lately.
Great example. We have a couple of people that have answered this question online, and then I'll give you mine as well. I go first for me. So this is Charlie Human. Hey, Charlie. I go first for me is also about personal responsibility. By going first, you control your destiny. You don't allow any circumstances to deter you from your chosen path. When you go first, you're free to choose your desired outcome without outside influence. You know what? And I know Shayna put something up here too. I go first. Nobody has the opportunity to pick or choose. When I go, it's my choice. So somewhat in the same vein. And then Daniel Hufford, I go first to me is acting on situations, be the first that does it and the first to get it done. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Oh my gosh. That is a great one, because I don't know about y'all, but if I have created a story about fear of something, great. And the longer I wait, the harder it gets. So just take it on, get it done.
That's it. Yeah, we talk about in class the apprehension. So the stories we're telling ourselves create the apprehension, not the other way around. So by going first, just deals with that story and helps deal with that apprehension, creates the story that, you know what, I'm already done. I did the hard thing first, and I took it on, and it's over, and now I can just be there to support and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love actually how much that applies to even small things. So it's like I think about that in like big stuff. Oh, that making that leap is really scary, or doing this thing is really, really scary. It also applies to, it just came to me, like, what about that task that you've been putting off, that I've been putting off for months, years? The garage to get cleaned out, the drawer to be fixed, that household thing to be fixed up, and then the story is, that's hard to do, or it's going to take too long, and then it's longer and longer and longer, and it's gone on forever and ever. And then when I finally choose to just do the damn thing, it's done super quickly, and then that weight is just gone.
Yeah.
That kind of goes back to our Slight Edge, right? So I'll make a little plug for our book club tomorrow night.
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be those big, huge examples. Those are absolutely true. But it shows up all over the place.
All over the place. You know, it's interesting, your example, Chad. There's a couple of little things in my personal life, like getting my car fixed, right? And that just seemed, to your point, like big things. And they were just a pain in the ass. Let's just be clear, right?
Totally.
Dealing with my insurance issues and all of that. And all of a sudden, this week, like, I've gotten it, it's all done, and it's like, feels so good. And none of it was that big. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, house projects at the house here, there's a never ending pile of shit to do. And at some point that was like really overwhelming me. And then I just changed the approach and said, okay, I'm gonna do 4 things. I don't know what those 4 things are. I'm going to do 4 things. They don't have to be big. I mean, there's big stuff to do. There's little things to do. And so last month I did things like I fixed the screen door, or I the front door lock was messed up, so I did that. This month I fixed the latch on the gate. I painted a couple spots in the bedroom. Just little shit, and that felt so good to like start just moving that shit off. Yeah, sure, there's big stuff like I need to figure out what's going on with the backyard, and having that little stuff just keep getting ticked off and go away feels really good. And it loosens that, lowers that story, lowers that anticipation, apprehension, all that junk.
Yeah. And allows more room for joy.
Yep.
Why not, right?
And wins to celebrate and all sorts of really good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I love your answers, all y'all's answers, all y'all. I go first, and that all applies to me. The other piece where I go first is working on myself. So constantly deep diving within and looking at me to see what I can learn about me, because I know that I got to get all of this. The better that I work on my relationship with myself, the better the relationship is with the three of you and everybody out there as well. And that for me is if I'm asking people to hold up a mirror in our classes and really take that honest look at themselves, yeah, I got to do it. I got to do it first. So just like being vulnerable, right? With what you said, Chad, and doing all that. So it for me is one, it's just so important to take it on and see what's there. So anyway, thank you for playing tonight's episode or tonight's edition of one of High5's key messages.
Yeah.
Tonight's episode is the High5 staff. That'd
Right.
be a fun High5 Live.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, what else is on everybody's mind? If you have something you want to talk about, Facebook land, put it out here. Have you guys seen anything?
I haven't seen anything specific. I'm going to put in a shameless plug for our book club, though. If you are not signed up for our book club, we start our book club on the Slight Edge tomorrow night at, I've been practicing this, 5:30 Pacific, 6:30 Mountain, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern Time. Get you some Slight Edge, Jeffrey Olson. I almost said Osborne. Jeffrey Olson. And we're starting tomorrow night. And if you want to participate, even if you haven't picked up the book, even if you haven't read the first 3 chapters, send Michelle at High5 Leadership an email. Copy me, Kevin at high5leadership.com, an email, and we would love to have you be involved tomorrow night. We've got almost 30 people signed up for the book club, and we did it about a month and a half ago as the High5 team, and it was really an impactful book. I'm excited about going back through it and reconnecting to some of the things that we talked about during our internal book club. So if you're listening and you have not yet signed up, send me an email. We would love for you to participate as well.
I'm putting your emails in the messages.
Awesome.
And what time is that in GMT?
Hey, Daniel, welcome, brother. It has been a long time. Good to see you. Yeah, David, we're brothers from another mother. David Walker.
Missed my smart ass comment.
Sorry, what was it?
Totally.
I overtalked it.
I asked you what time the book club was in GMT.
GMT, it's like 8 hours from here. I don't know. So look it up.
Be 12:30 in the morning.
Okay. What time is 7:30 Central in GMT?
It would be 6 hours. It should be a 6-hour difference.
Stupid Alexa.
Hey,
Thank you, Chad Alexa. We appreciate you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Come on, be nice to Alexa. We're nice. All right, cool. Well, what else do we want to talk about tonight? What do you guys got?
Something I wanted to go over because it came up recently. I was talking to somebody about journaling, and they came up with something, an obstacle that I had early on, and that is finding gratitude. So in the gratitude section, we have in our journals that we printed 5 things that you're grateful for every day. I use those as things that I was grateful for yesterday. And in that journal, in the beginning, pretty easy to come up with top 5 things. The next day, in order to get 5 new things, took a little bit more effort. And then by day 5, I'm stuck for 10 minutes thinking what's new. I could always list the same 5 things, but I never saw that as a purpose for journaling, is to repeat what I had the day before and the day before. I mean, I'm always grateful for my apple cinnamon oatmeal. So coming up with 5 new things, I understand how that can be a roadblock sometimes. And then it got me to thinking on why that is and what the actual purpose of the journal was. So for the purpose for me, and I'm not saying it should be the same for everyone, but for help me as a sustainability tool, was not just to write down the 5 things I was grateful for, but to actually practice gratitude. The difference being not looking back in retrospect of what I liked, but to actually look for it throughout the day. So when something happened, I'm grateful for that. And I log it in mentally, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for that. And I do that throughout the day. So the next morning, all I'm doing is logging down from the day before. I never really have to think anymore about what I was grateful for because I was looking for it. And I think that's the difference between documenting it and practicing it. So I've even, in a couple of conversations that I've had with people regarding that, I said it's also a pretty good idea after those 5 in the morning. You don't necessarily have to write it down, but about somewhere in mid-afternoon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, while whatever you're doing, takes 30 seconds to a minute. Just name top 3 things you're grateful for so far. And we know that being grateful in that moment and being either frustrated or negative, it can't occupy the same space. So it's a good mood shift in the middle of the day, and it helps you come up with those things easier. And that's another little step to practicing gratitude.
You know, Dominic, that's so funny you say that. So today I had the opportunity to go to the Social Security Administration office, which for most people, that is not a grateful time. And I wasn't conscious. So that's the first time I've heard you say what you just said about practicing it and midday, you know, just being aware of it. And I almost did that unconsciously today in the Social Security office. So I got there about 1 o'clock, checked in on the computer, and, you know, I had my number, and I looked up on the scoreboard, and my number was far, far away. And my first thought was, oh shit, I'm going to be here forever. And then I thought, you know what? I've got the time. It's okay. I've got things I can do. I was focused on taking care of some emails and using my time effectively. And the whole time I was listening to the people around me, because there was, you know, there were probably like 40 chairs, and every single one of them was filled when I walked in. So I'm like, okay, great. There's 40 people in front of me. This is going to take forever. And I just stayed in a space of, you know what, I'm okay with this. I wasn't frustrated. I wasn't anxious. I don't know that I was necessarily grateful, but as I think about it, I was grateful that I had the time to be able to be there, that I could take time out of the middle of the day to go get my, you know, replacement card handled. It wasn't a big deal. I just needed to get a replacement card. And I had this story about how involved it was going to be, because I was concerned that I didn't have the right identification. I had my birth certificate, my passport. And when I looked at all the requirements, I was like, oh shit, you know, do I have the right stuff? And this is going to be forever. And I had all these stories going on. And then I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to be in the moment, and I'm grateful I could be here. And I was listening again to the stories of the people around me. And there was not a lot of gratitude in that room, in that particular, for that 45 minutes. And it only took me 45 minutes. I was grateful that it only took 45 minutes, because I was prepared to be there for hours. I had texted Michelle she asked me about something at home, and I said, well, I'm at the Social Security Administration. It'll be Friday before I can get back and answer your question. And I was anticipating a much longer experience there, and it was only 45 minutes. And so I really was just grateful for the opportunity to take care of it, and everything went smoothly. But I wasn't consciously, what struck me by what you just said was I wasn't consciously aware of being grateful in that moment. And so choosing, when I caught myself in those stories, because I caught the stories and I reframed them. And what would have made it even more powerful would have been to just focus on the gratitude for those things in that moment. So thank you for that.
So something that helped me when I was beginning the gratitude process was I had a story, and I've heard this from others. I had a story that it was this big, huge, grandiose thing, like the gratitude process. So like, I've got to feel like it's got to be like a certain big thing that I'm grateful for. And now I actually have fun finding the little things or the uncommon things that I'm grateful that I walk in the dogs greet me, or that puppy ears are soft, or that I don't know. I mean, just whatever. And I typically have some of those in my journal a lot. And what's fun about that is now that while it was harder at first, now it's easier and funner. And I feel like that then translates into my day-to-day life, like Dominic and Kevin have talked about, and that I just see it more often in all over the place. So like Kevin's talking about the Social Security office, and I remember when I went to the DMV to get my license, and right now the California DMV is also typically not a very gratitude-filled place. And when I look around, the majority of people look miserable. And how much easier it was to just be happy. And I knew that I was going to be there for whenever I was going to be there. And I had my appointment, and I'd get out when I got out, and whatever was going to happen. And the woman helping me out ran into like all sorts of computer problems. So it took extra time. Like her computer was just fighting her every step of the way, and she was super apologetic. And I just stood there and said, no problem. It'll be done when it's done, and we'll move on. And she was just super nice. And that's likely not what she gets often in that situation.
And it makes the whole process just go so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
The people behind me. So I was C625 today, and the people right behind me were C626. So I knew they couldn't do anything till I got my turn. And I was just listening to them talking about, and they weren't really bitching. It was a woman and her two kids. They weren't really bitching about it, but they kept asking questions. And even at one point they were answering, it hasn't moved for 30 minutes. And so they went up to the window and they asked somebody, well, where are we? And I was just like, you know what? It's just going to be what it's going to be. And so when I sat down with the woman, one of the things that I was focused on was mirroring and matching her, and just creating rapport with her, because I knew it wasn't going to, I knew that it was likely she was not going to be in the best mood. Government workers are typically not in the best mood because of the shit that they face on a daily basis for whatever reason. And so I was just mirroring and matching her in a positive way. And it was a great experience, and she was fun, and she was friendly, and it was a very vanilla experience. And for many people, I think it would have been like pulling toenails to just go there and experience that for 45 minutes. And for me personally, it would have been like pulling toenails a couple of years ago. And because of the practice and the work that I've done on being in the moment and focusing on the things we're talking about, it really did make a big difference.
It's so all about our story, right? And what we bring to it. Yeah.
I was absolutely amazed in recent years about what you focus on expands for you. And I know this is a common thing when I talk to Barb and I say, wow, that's going to be, when you were talking about getting your car done, what's going to be a pain in the ass? I'm like, well, now it is. I mean, you just made that for yourself. I'm like, I don't believe that's what you do for yourself. It's a pain in the ass no matter what I do. I don't control that. So have that theory rather than the opposite, everything's going to be just fine. I remember reading a book by Jen Sincero where she said she just had fantastic luck about parking spaces. Whenever she had to go downtown into the city, she never worried about parking because it always just worked out for her. And every time she had to go someplace in the city, there was a parking space right in front every single time. She just expected it, and it happened. And I thought, well, that's great for you. And then when it's weird how that absolutely happens. And since that's happened, I've had to go to DMV a few times and those experiences. And when I walk in with this isn't going to be that big a deal, I'm just going to get my number and get right up there. I've never waited more than like 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know. I know people wait a long time. It's just weird that when you go in with that, when I go in with that attitude, it just works out. And I hear the stories around, and a lot of times those stories come from somebody else's story. It's not even our story. Somebody else said they spent all day at DMV, and the next door neighbor spent all day at DMV, and your sister spent all day at DMV. So I expect it's going to be horrible for me too. Just expect it. And there's a lot of people in there that are miserable because they expect it, and that's exactly what they get.
Yes. It is. Karen Oakley just said, remembering, because quite often, because of our programming, our first thought is negative. And so recognizing, oh shit, I just told myself a negative story, and rewiring it. So, and it takes practice.
It takes so much practice. We talk about it in class that the people in class, however old they are, they've been practicing being that way for all their years before they came to class. They've been practicing being them for their whole life. And it's ingrained, and those grooves in our brains are deep. And it's easy for the needle to just drop into that old track and play that old song. And it really is about practicing and digging that new groove, creating that new groove, and creating that new behavior and habit. It does. It takes focused effort and practice, and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
It is. And it gets faster. What I have discovered for myself is that negative story will show up, and I recognize it very quickly now, make a different choice, and most of the time just laugh at myself. I laugh at the story because it's funny to me that it still shows up. And there are also still times where that groove was deep, and I need to pick up the phone and I call one of you guys and be like, I need some perspective.
Yeah.
Right? You need some perspective.
And you know what? That's really what it's all about. It's about perspective. We talk about in class that there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. We all have a different map. And that's becoming more and more real and more clear to me. Having the courage, because let's just be honest, it requires courage to get out of our comfort zone and to get off our map and to choose to look at it from somebody else's perspective. That requires a lot of courage. And I don't always have that courage. Sometimes I want to defend my truth because I know I've seen it. I've seen this before. I know how this works. I'm smarter than you are, and I know how this is. And it requires a lot of courage for me to say, you know what? Let me just look at it from your perspective. I might still be right, but you know what? You might too. Or you might be righter than I am, right? So it's not that I'm wrong. You just might have a better way of looking at it. And that requires courage and practice. And it requires a willingness to be wrong. And that is so hard for me. That has been so hard for me. And still, I won't say up until now, it's easier, but it's still not easy for me to be wrong. And I don't know what the deeper, peeling back the onion, I don't know what's down there as to why I feel the need to be so right. And yet it's there. And so I at least now have a willingness to look at it and consider the possibility that, you know what, maybe there's a better way to look at this, to be a student, to be open to the other possibilities. And hell yeah, that requires a lot of practice for me.
All right, well, let's talk. A couple of things have come up. And I saw you told David that you guys could have a,
Yeah, but we could talk about it right here for sure.
but let's at least address it. And his comment was about how to deal with a team member at work. And in this case, it's a team member that feels like he's actually been asked to lower his standards to industry standards, and is causing some, from what I can tell, some challenges in the workspace. So not everybody wants to deal with them. And how do you deal with somebody, and I'm probably going to make it a little bit broader, and then Kev, you certainly can have a conversation with David about his situation, but how do you deal with somebody in an environment, a team member who is a mood setter and not always a positive mood setter? Because I think that's something that most of us probably have encountered or would encounter. And what do you do? How do you handle that person? So I'll open up to the floor. I got a couple of ideas, but.
So I actually have felt like I've been the person being asked that, actually, in my job before, for whatever reason. And it's not, I've got a strong opinion for what the right way is, and that's not the direction that people want to go. And there was a long time in my life where I would just fight the shit out of that and make everybody uncomfortable, because I could set the mood. And I'm better now because I have more awarenesses. So for me now, it's recognizing that I've been on that side, too. So I know what that feels like. And I've been on the other side now as well. And for me, it's the middle ground, and it's having the conversation. So it's, how do we turn this into a win-win? So where are you coming? So coming from that, this is why I think it needs to be done this way. Let me just lay it out. Here's where I'm coming from. Here's how it feels. Now you lay your stuff out. What things are you dealing with that I don't know about? Is there a budget concern? Is there a time concern? What is it that you're dealing with that's causing your opinion? Cool. Now let's just put it all out there. So if everything's out there, where's the win-win? How can we both walk out of this so that both of us feel like we are getting it done in a way that we're happy with? Because there's a way to make that a win-win somewhere in the middle. And if we just put everything that's affecting it out on the table, then you can start figuring out where all of those external, because that's usually where that stuff comes from, is external, sometimes internal, and that's okay too, where all that crap's coming from that's creating that story. And then now we can look at them and figure it out. Okay, so if it's a money concern, is that a hard thing, or is that something that's flexible? Is the time thing hard, or is that flexible? Is this, and start just dealing with them one at a time, and then find the win-win in it.
Yeah, that's really good, Chad. It really is about what I took from what you just said there. The key is asking questions, right? It all comes back to the questions that we ask versus the things that we say. And the answers are always there. We have all the answers. It's just a matter of pulling them out. And when our ego gets in the way, when my ego gets in the way of having to be right and having to have my solution be the solution, that's when problems creep in. And so it really is about having the courage. Again, it comes back to self-confidence and courage, about having a willingness to say, you know what, I don't have to have all the answers. And it's okay. If your answer is the route that we go, that's okay. And if I can add something to that, make it better, cool. And if not, then I'm good with going your direction and letting you win. I don't need to win. I don't need to personally win for us to win as a team. And just staying focused on that common outcome. So what's our outcome, right? What do we want to do as a team? What are we focused on here? What do you bring? What do I bring? What are the constraints? I love how you frame that as, what's flexible and what's fixed. Let's just deal with the facts and get it all out on the table. But as soon as we start bringing all our ego and our emotions and all that other stuff into it, that's what complicates it. So I love what you said there.
Yeah, I had forgotten the outcome. It came to me while you were talking, but that's one of the things that gets out there. So here we are today. There's the outcome. Here's all the junk that's in the middle. What's A to B? What's the path?
It's all circumstances, right? There's always going to be circumstances.
It totally is. And the other thing that is always available, and in the paint shop, this isn't apply as much, but it doesn't always have to be done all the time at the first time. The paint shop that doesn't work as well for, but in my other job in IT, just because it doesn't all have to be perfect on go one. There can be the first step, the first part, and then there can be the next part. It doesn't all have to be done the first time, depending on what that outcome looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, excellent answers, guys. It goes back to outcome. And the only thing that I will add is, as the leader, is how can you enroll and inspire? So again, asking questions, but really almost buttering this person up to be on your team, right? Join their team, as we would teach, but butter up. I don't want to say it that way, but really get them so on your side that they're now out there campaigning for the same outcome that you are with everybody else. And they're being that role model that we talked about a little while ago, right? And how do we really go out and make people feel so appreciated, right? So to have somebody who is so committed that they want to do it so perfect, right? We want to acknowledge that and appreciate it. And, how else can we take that value that they have and really, now drive it into maybe a different level of shared outcome. But we don't want to lessen what's important to that person. How do we create that conversation?
Well, the other thing that comes to me, so in this case, I know who we're talking about here, and I know what the values of the organization are. And so in this particular case, you can always come back to the values, doing the right thing. What's the right thing? So our values will always steer us in the right direction. So if there's ever a conflict and we come up to, how do we know what we're supposed to do in this case? Because there are times, let's just face it, there's times when both perspectives could be accurate.
Could be right. Mm-hmm.
Could be right. We both could be right. And we're both focused on the outcome, and yet there's still conflict there. And so for me, that's when it's time to check in with the core values. So what's the right thing? Is the right thing for the painter to be so precise and so specific, or is the right thing to be not again, it's not about cheapening your skills or lessening, but what's the right thing? And if the answer is the right thing is to be specific and get it exactly right, then it's time to enroll and inspire everybody else to get on board as to why that's the right thing. And everybody focused on an outcome, driven by the values, that will get you to the outcome as a team every time.
Yes, absolutely. And what I want to add to that is understanding what those values mean to them and mean to you. Because just because the value is doing the right thing I guarantee that all 4 of us on the call, that means something different.
Sure.
There's just the 4 of us here even. So getting that out on the table too. So you're absolutely, let's go to the core values. Let's talk about doing the right thing. And what's that mean to you in this context?
Yep.
And put that out on the table too. Because that's part of that whole big whiteboard of things.
So that so reminds me of the book that we're reading right now, Dare to Lead, and creating a safe space that we have to create a safe space in our environment to be able to have these kind of open conversations, trust each other, that when you say, well, so for me, the right thing is X, and I say, but you know what, for me, the right thing is Y, not only for us to be both comfortable stating our opinion, but putting it out there in a safe way where we can have conversation about it and respect each other and see it from each other's opinion and perspective, so we can come to a common approach to what's the outcome. How do we get to the outcome? That's critical, and that's missing in a lot of organizations and spaces, and that's an opportunity for growth, is to create that safe container to have those kind of honest, truthful, trusting conversations.
Absolutely. And that it's okay for us not to have the same answer. I'm not asking because I'm looking to impose my answer on you. I'm asking because I want your opinion. I want your viewpoint. I want to understand.
Yeah.
And here's mine, so you understand me too. And then there was another thought there. Anyway, yeah. It was funny you mentioned the book, because when I was talking about like putting everything out there, she talks about all those Post-it notes, and that was what I was visualizing, was like all the Post-it notes of this conversation, the junk that are all creating this, with the outcome over here at the end. Not that I'm a visual learner at all, of course.
Not at all, for sure.
I want to say a couple of things, because I've run into that situation a bunch in that exact scenario. And let me preface this by saying there are no 2 situations exactly the same. There are a lot of elements, and there's a lot of ways to handle a lot of different personalities in a lot of different situations. They're not the same. So I'm not saying this is the one way to handle it. But in general, most of the time, it's one of 2 symptoms in that case. One of them is either they're not being heard, or they don't have that inherent value in them, or no shared outcome. And you guys have mentioned both of those in a variety of different ways. And one of them, what Barb was saying, butter them up. Well, for a little bit. So when I state to that person just how valuable they are to me and what a big component they are to the overall attitude of the shop, and they're a driving force, and they're a leader in whatever they do. That could be my painter, it could be my detailer, it could be anybody, but they are a driving force, they're a leader. And this is where I need them to be a leader, because they're valuable. That different level of personal responsibility kicks in, and they feel like they're being heard. So
yeah, that's what I meant right there. Beautiful.
So frustration sets in on 2 levels. If they don't think they're being heard, they're upset and they're negative and they're pissed. Or the other one being, they are going towards a very different outcome. I want the car to be absolutely perfect in order for me to paint it, or I'm not going to deal with it in some circumstances. So developing those outcomes that are the same, where we are on the same page, makes it a lot easier. Generally, it's those 2 things is what is my experience in it.
Yeah, and the other thing came. So I love what you just said, Dominic. And for anybody that has, this is just an easy example. For anyone who has a significant other who has ever told them, you're not listening to me, it doesn't really matter how much you think I wasn't listening, because they didn't feel heard.
Yeah.
Whether it was how I responded, oftentimes how I responded, typically that's the one. If they don't feel heard, I wasn't listening. And that's personal responsibility. And every one of us can likely think of a time that we've been in some sort of relationship at work or at home, and we didn't feel listened to. And to your point, Barb, about enrolling and coming together as a team, and we also can think of one where we were listened to and we felt heard, and that's building a team right there.
Yeah. Um, and it goes back to, I think, where this all started, with asking questions. And I'm going to give a shout out to my buddy Lenny Howling, who he and I did our body shop boot camp last week in Calgary. And he does a process with folks, and he did it in boot camp, that just literally has people list their values. So, right, we have company values, but what are our personal values? What do each of us really value? And I started writing, and I probably had a list of about 50 things that I value. And what would it mean, right, if we sat down and really knew what each individual values? So that's a deeper level of commitment to the relationship and the conversation, when we really get down to that level of understanding this person. So I literally was on a coaching call before this, and the person was talking about some challenges they were having with one of their employees, and just completely different, right? High D versus high S disc quadrant. But it was telling me about what really kind of started to light up this person that was frustrating them. And I'm like, do you really know what they value? And so we're now doing some exercises around that. And the first thing I said was, sit down and just ask.
Yeah. In the coaching work that I've been doing with our clients, one of the first exercises that I do with them is what we call a values elicitation in some area of their life. And it is so revealing to me. And it was revealing for me too. When I first did it, I was like, you know what? I've never thought about this in any kind of a meaningful way until I was forced to sit down and do it. I didn't think about it. And yet those values, they really do guide us. And if we don't know how to state what they are, we kind of feel them, but we don't know how to state them. And we don't really know. I mean, so if I said to you, so what are your values? What do you value? It's a hard question for people to answer. And so when we get more specific on it and we look at the various areas of life, we start to see what the common characteristics or common values are across the different areas of life. That really is your moral compass. And understanding that and knowing that makes a huge difference. And so doing that exercise, going through an exercise like that, has incredible value.
I was going to say the same thing, Kevin. I've been doing the values elicitation stuff with myself for the life areas, because I wanted to get to what my core, because that is a really hard question to just answer out of the blue. And so I wanted to get to what are my core values, because I knew if I would do the values elicitation on all the life areas, the ones that consistently showed up in the top, those are core values to me, because they keep showing up in various areas of my life.
Yep.
And so I'm in the process of doing that now and just really spending some time with that.
Awesome.
Perception versus reality.
Yeah, I'm reading Bob's post here.
Well, we've already been on for 45 minutes, guys. Time flies, having fun.
I know.
Yeah. One of the things that I said that I was going to talk about, I'm just going to mention it tonight, and we can have a more in-depth conversation, is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, Kyle posted that. I've not yet had a chance to watch the video. So tell us about that.
Well, it's one that has shown up for me in my life. And it's also something that in some of the circles and some of the events and things that I've gone to, people talk about. And for me, it probably goes back to the deeper sense of worth. Right. But there was a time where I'm like, who am I to run a leadership development company? I mean, what makes me the expert? Well, what makes me the expert is I go first and I've done it. And there's still some of those old stories and that old programming that I don't know everything. And am I worthy of having this level of success and doing this? And the answer is yes. And it's something that in the video that Kyle posted, 70% of people have experienced at some point imposter syndrome. And I believe that number to be true. And it's really that lack of self-confidence and lack of self-worth that shows up, and it shows up all the time, right? Personally, but in our classes, we see it a lot. And it's because of the programming and the stories and the things that we've taught ourselves. And for me, it's really questioning the story, comes back to questioning the story of, well, why not me, right? Why is this, why am I having this challenge? And is the story that I'm telling myself benefiting me, yes or no? And I put this was a good one from years ago. I was really, really intimidated in the corporate world by people that had really high titles, right? And it wasn't until I realized one day that every one of us puts our pants on the same way, right? We one leg at a time, and we all are just on a different journey experiencing it. And so it is I feel now it's my duty to just bring 100% of me to whatever it is that I'm doing, and to create that. But anyway, I'm opening it up.
I felt the same way when I saw that. I thought, well, who doesn't have imposter syndrome? Because at one time or another, it's a negative story. So at one time or another, do I have a negative story about what I'm doing, or what can I accomplish? Absolutely. Or who am I to do that? And then I saw the 70. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I think it's higher. I think it's absolutely true. And it's about changing that story. It really is. I mean, that's what we teach. It's about creating the story, not what can go wrong, but what could go right. And why not me? I had those same stories about ever being in front of a class for a high five. And I had that conversation with more than a couple of people that I don't know what makes me qualified to stand in front of a class. And changing the story to, why not me? What disqualifies me from being in front of a class? Nothing but old stories.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Dominic. It's I don't know that I could count the number of times the imposter syndrome probably showed up for me in my life. And as you mentioned, Barb, self-worth, lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence. That's where those stories come from. There's probably a correlation on the whole 70% thing with lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence stories, probably somewhere around there. Because that's likely where a lot of that comes from. Certainly did for me. It came out in the last class, literally in the middle of a process. All of a sudden I had a realization that I had reached a level of success that I had been working for a very long time. And it hadn't hit me really until it did. And then I was like, crap, who am I to be doing this stuff? And it showed. It showed, at least to all of you, it showed. You all could see it. The stories got really, really loud.
Yeah.
And that's the continued work, right? Is writing the new story, asking why is this story showing up, and is it benefiting me? And
Absolutely.
I know it sounds simple, and I know it's not always easy. I get that. Trust me, it's for me as well. And it really is that simple, because we can either choose to believe that story that has absolutely no benefit, or we get to write a new story, because every single thing in our life is a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was a long time where I would have let what happened in that process, cloud the rest of the entire day. And that's not what happened. So that process happened, and it was whatever it was. And the awareness was that that story was happening, and then choosing something, creating the awareness around it. So I had the opportunity to create something different. And I don't believe it carried on into the next process that I did or the rest of the day. So
yeah, it did not.
No,
I think it's really telling that the fear of success is absolutely just as debilitating as the fear of failure. And when you were standing in front of the table and you said it out loud to me, you almost had like a smirk on your face. It was, I know it's just a story, but I didn't say it at the time because you said it out loud, like, Dominic, I have a story. And then when you said it out loud, it's almost as if it sounded ridiculous as it was coming out of your mouth. It was a very true feeling and you were feeling all of it. But when you heard it out loud, it's almost like it was easier to deal with, or it was easier to discard. And I thought that was so telling, that how strong can that hold be on that old story that's not benefiting you when it just stays in your head? Like it's in a container and it's safe there and it can't be penetrated because it's stuck inside. And you said it out loud and it's almost like you released it. It was cool to see, because when you said it out loud, I'm like, I get it. And you're doing just fine. And it went away. I thought that was really cool to see in real time.
yeah. And that's the whole thing, is see it as a story, right? Because up until the point where we can see stuff as stories, it is so debilitating because
It's true.
It's our truth.
It's truth. Until we see it as a story, it's true.
Yep. And so being able to see it, so opening that perspective, all the things that we've talked about tonight, and being able to see it, that's the power.
and that's why it's not always easy. I don't, the way you just all said that triggered this. That's why it's not always easy, because it feels real, because it is real, until I choose for it not to be.
It's your reality.
Not necessarily always the easy part.
Yeah.
And it does get easier.
With practice.
With practice, it does get easier.
It absolutely. So I know we only have like 3 minutes left. And what I wanted to say tonight, because this has been huge for me over the last several months, it has to do with getting easier with practice. Growing up, and so I'll be 50 next month. In 5 weeks, I'll be 50.
Hey, welcome to the club.
For 50 freaking years, I have been a judgmental SOB. I have been so judgmental in my life, and it's a product of what I was taught and what I learned and how I've been, and I have been practicing so hard to just observe people on their path and just be okay with people being on their path. And it's, and catching myself judging. So I used to be, so if I saw somebody, so for me, tattoos and piercings, I have a story about it. And wherever it came from, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I had a story about it. And I would see somebody with tattoos, and I'm not talking about a tattoo. I have 2 tattoos. I'm talking about people who were heavily tattooed, heavily pierced. And my first thought would be, what the WTF? What is going on with you? What is your deal? And how could you do that? And so much judgment. And I've been focused on just letting people be on their path and being okay with it. It's not my story and it doesn't matter to me. And why do I care? And if you want to tattoo yourself from your head to your toes, and you want to pierce every inch of your skin, then it's your skin. Do it. I don't care. And yet I've got these stories and these judgments. And so it has just, lately, I have been so focused on just being okay with people being on their path and not letting it, not imposing my need for it to be something else, some other right for me to be right. It all comes back to, why do I need to be so right about it? And yet I still catch myself. And what's cool about practice, and this one made me think about it, I'm getting better. I still have that initial reaction sometimes of what the, you know what, it's okay. I don't even get the whole WTF out. I just get the, you know what, it's okay. Why do I care? And that has only come from practice and awareness and just being okay with, you know what, it's not my story. I don't have to be right. Everybody, it's okay for everybody to just be the way they are. And it doesn't matter. Their choices are their choices, and it's okay.
And what difference has that made in your life, Kat?
It has, you know what, it has honestly, I think about the conversations I used to have with myself and others, because I used to be vocal about it. Do you see that guy? Do you see what he's done? Why would you do that? It has given me more time to just focus on the things that are really important to me and I care about. It really has eliminated unnecessary and irrelevant conversation that honestly just doesn't matter. And it has, the other thing that it's done is it's allowed me to have more love and kindness and acceptance in my life. That's what it has created. Because as soon as I stopped asking WTF, I really just started seeing people as human beings and like, you know what, whatever their path is, whatever their story is, they've got a story and it's okay. And I love them anyway. And so it has created more love and acceptance in my life, honestly. And I hadn't, till you just asked me that question, Barb, I hadn't thought about it. That's what it's given me.
Yep. And just from me to you, it shows in the classroom. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Oh my gosh, we could go on for hours. Because
hey, look, it's an hour. Holy shit.
We all know that we all love words.
We used our words. We used all our words tonight. Yay.
And I, didn't use any words 10 days ago. So
you got an excess. You got a plethora.
I got a few in tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this conversation. There is a couple other things that came up that we'll talk about next month, but we'll be back in April, promise you, and excited. So just thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for supporting us. And we, you know what, we love what we do. So I don't know that we've said this, we have a purpose, right? So one of the things that we got together, because we all knew why we did what we did as part of High5, and we got together and came up with our purpose statement together. And it is simply this: it is to inspire you to change your world, because it's the only world you can change is yours, so that together we can change the world. Because for us, it is about living in a world where people are less judgmental, happier, they choose joy, they write new stories, and they really go look for the positive, because it's a hell of a lot more fun to live that way. And thank you for being on this ride with us. And we know it's not always easy, and we're here to support you along this path in your journey. And I just appreciate very much, very grateful, as we started off with that, for your support of High5 leadership.
Thank you for being a High5 lifer. So that's a new, what do we call it, Chad? It's a new community identifier. Thank you, that we are looking to promote. So we are looking for High5 lifers. And if you're attending these calls and you're part of our community, that's what you are. High5 lifer. You are focused on the positive. All those things that Barb just said. That is the characteristic and the identity that we are focused on. So thank you for that. It would not be right for me to not mention that we have a Evolve class coming up. So if you've already been through our 3-day class, or you've been through somebody's 3-day class or 4-day class, please check out our Evolve. It is the next level. So we are either green and growing, or we are dying and decaying. And it's all about moving forward, focused on what we want. So if you want more information about Evolve, please reach out to any of us. We were happy to have that conversation with you. And we also have a 3-day class coming up in Chicago, May 3rd through the 5th. So if there's people in your life that you want to have this experience, if you yourself have not had a 3 or 4-day experience with somebody, please reach out to us. We would love for you to have this, because we truly are focused on changing the world, changing your world, so we can change the world. And all right, so shameless plugs dropped in. Yay.
You know what? And because it's important.
It is important.
It's important,
is important.
For us to continue to do the work. All right. Well, love you all out there. Love the 3 of you. Choose joy and have an incredible week. And book club tomorrow.
Book club. Send me an email, Kevin at High5 Leadership. If you want, if you're not already in, Kevin at High5 Leadership, we will get you all the information. The Slight Edge, Jeff Olson, and we will.
Olson.
Thank you. We will see you guys tomorrow night, 5:30 Pacific, 6:30 Mountain, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. Take that.
And something GMT. All right, guys.
Good night, GMT.
Have a great night. See y'all later.
All right. Love you guys. Bye-bye.